Hello, everyone. Welcome to DarkspiderCast, episode 5-4, I believe. And pardon if I go through the pleasantries just a little bit briefly, and I also keep the episode potentially kind of short. And I mean potentially, because I feel like whenever I say, oh yeah, sorry if this is a short episode or anything like that, I'm always kind of thinking in advance, and I'm always thinking in a very how do I put it? Like, I'm always kind of just trying to think of all the possibilities of what could happen because sometimes when I type things out on the Google Doc, it doesn't look as big as it ends up being. Like, sometimes it's only a couple of bullet points, and then it ends up being a whole discussion, and then other times there's a bunch of bullet points, but then I end up truncating an awful lot of my thoughts. I finally managed to use the word truncate. I've been meaning to use it for quite some time. But the other reason, I don't know if you can tell from the sound of my voice, and it's funny because recently I started monitoring my input through my microphone here, so hopefully it's a little distinct, but unfortunately I am sick. So that's another reason why I'm gonna keep the episode kind of short, just so that I don't talk a whole lot, but also to preserve energy, preserve oxygen, if you will. Now, thankfully, it is not COVID. I did get tested, and it did come back negative. And that's another thing too, is that it never felt because I did have COVID once, back in January 2021. In fact, you could argue that COVID was the snowball, the very tiny snowball that just got bigger and bigger and bigger, that proceeded to cause a lot of things to happen to me in 2021. Like, 2020 was the populace's worst year, the masses' worst year, because obviously that's when COVID broke out for the whole world. 2021, I'm not going to say it was the worst year, but it was the year where, like, shit went down and I needed to, like, actually think about what I needed to do and who I needed to be, that sort of thing. And the first grain that created that hill was pretty much catching COVID at the beginning of January, which then led me to my work troubles and not being able to go to school and all these different things. Anyways, but yeah, I got tested, it came back negative, and like I was mentioning before, it never felt weird like that when it did back in January. Because when I got sick back in January and it ended up being COVID, I did feel I've been sick enough to know when something's off, something feels different. And it did feel different. Something felt very unusual about it. I was able to survive it. It wasn't like it didn't necessarily knock me on my ass, but it was like there was something there to at least kind of like it was almost like taking a punch to the jaw. It doesn't knock you out, but you're kind of like, oh, that was different. This, however, for sure, I'm like, this is a cold. I can tell. I've had enough colds to be like, this is just a standard cold. But just to be certain, go get tested. Got the confirmation. It's negative. It's just a cold. So I'm just trying to breeze on through it. It's only been a couple of days, and I'm already feeling myself getting better. I feel the phlegm, not to put the disgusting details out there, but I feel the phlegm loosening up, and that to me is always a good sign, because that's usually the exit process of being sick. So that's pretty cool. And I'm hoping so too, because another thing that I also kind of want to talk about briefly here in this intro portion was just how just so much content is coming up here at once, not only for the podcast, but also for the niche channel. But I mean that in a good way, because that's ultimately what I've been really busy with these past few days. It's just getting an awful lot of things moving. McFarlane themselves have been a little bit busy unveiling so many figures. And I mean, I don't want to, put myself up on a form of a pedestal or anything like that, but because there's definitely others that cover this that have a way bigger following base, a way bigger community and such. But I just feel like, because some of my more popular videos on the niche channel are McFarlane Toys related and Batman related, some of the figures that they make for that company, I need to keep in touch with the news. So lately I've been trying to figure out a way to maybe start incorporating shorts back into my channel, especially since recently there's been apparently a algorithm change that benefits creators when using shorts. Because before, basically shorts and the long form videos were completely separate as far as what could help somebody discover your content versus the other. Like, if you posted a short, it could take off, but they'll never see your other content, your longer form content, apparently. And it's possible that maybe, I don't know, I haven't seen anything distinct as far as clear-cut evidence. But according to some of the higher ups over on YouTube, and then YouTube educators kind of regurgitating this information, they pretty much fixed the algorithm in a way where now posting shorts about that content will also help other people discover the content related to that subject. So, case in point, if I made a short about the new Arkham City McFarlane Toys figures that recently got revealed, which I technically did, when they were hinting at Adam with the first Batman one on their Twitter feed. And at the time, I was asking people, what do they think the other three are going to be, and who's the Build-A-Figure? Obviously, by now we know, but at the time, I was kind of pondering that question to serve as a call to action thing for the short. And so, if I post that, then even though people check out the short on the shorts feed on YouTube, they should technically, by proxy, start receiving my McFarlane Toys content as well. Whenever I do a Batman figure review, they should. I'm not gonna say that they're gonna get the whole feed flooded, but they should have one or two things here and there pop out in their recommended feed from me because they checked out that short. In layman's terms, that's pretty much what the fix should be. And it's funny because it caught on like wildfire, because now people, certain YouTubers that I follow are all of a sudden doing shorts. They're not like blasting their feed with like nothing but shorts, but they, before they would not be doing shorts whatsoever. And in the past week, I know two distinct ones that never did shorts, and now all of a sudden there's a short on my feed from them. I'm like, that's conveniently timed. So, but I'm not blaming them. I'm not blaming them, because if this can help grow their channel, have at it. And it's very low lift because you're creating a short, something that could be easily done with like your phone. So I'm gonna start doing some research into that. Just looking into the different, concepts and things that I can work to benefit the channel. More video essays. I'm putting the finishing touches on the Batgirl cancellation video essay, which hopefully will be up by the end of this week, or maybe even up by the time you're listening to this, considering how late-ish this might be potentially going up on. Because, again, unfortunately, I was sick. There was one day earlier this week where I did get the brunt of it with this cold, and even though it wasn't like the worst I've ever felt with any kind of sickness, any kind of like flu or cold, it was enough for me to just be like, you know what, let me just, like, I don't want to go on the computer. I know I should push myself to finish editing and finish compiling the stuff for the Batgirl essay, and then maybe jump ahead as to whatever it is that I did record for the podcast and maybe edit that. But my mind state was not there. My mind state was, and I just want to chill on this couch, eat the Jersey Mike's sub that my girlfriend ordered, and watch Hell's Kitchen on TV. That's pretty much what it ended up being. Hey, I liked it. It's a bummer that I fell a little behind on my content, but these sort of things happen. But aside from that, like, there's just so many things that I've been meaning to get to, including a couple of things that I don't want to obviously talk about yet. But let's just say that they involve parties that I'm like, oh, this would be cool. This would be so cool for the channel. So we'll see. We'll see where those kind of things kind of evolve and go forth. And especially, like I said, with all these announcements and different ideas for videos, I mentioned, I'm going to mention something actually in the What I've Been Playing segments that could allude to a piece of content. Just one example of how, like, my brain's going into areas where I'm like, that could be an interesting video. That could be an interesting video. So hopefully that will benefit. That'll benefit the channel and see where that goes. So like I said, wanted to keep the pleasantries in the intro portion here to a minimum. Don't really have anything else to really talk about. So let's go ahead and get moving to one thing that I do want to address, considering that it was going to be the next big show that me and the girlfriend were going to sit down and watch. As per almost every Disney Plus show that has come to pass, me and the girlfriend have made it our tradition to now start watching She-Hulk, since that's the newest one that has debuted on the streaming platform from Marvel Studios. It's also going to be probably one of the most talked about ones because it was already causing a point of contention for a lot of people who have been watching the Marvel Universe, have been keeping up with this whole ordeal, and have been watching the trailers. You know that, you would know, if you have seen that stuff, that She-Hulk has been kind of a point of debate, a point of discussion when it comes to where exactly is the quality of Marvel Studios really heading to. Whether or not this is a symptom, pardon the pun, of either the pandemic, when things were causing a bit of a strain as far as the planning process of what Phase 4 was going to be, what is going on with these visual effects studios and houses as to whether or not they're being crunched into working with a smaller budget, if they're working with just just a lot of conditions that are causing a strain on the quality of the visual effects, and that prompted a lot of people to kind of debate whether or not they looked good when those trailers were coming out, or whether the subject matter, whether the She-Hulk overall was just going to be good. And so the premiere episode is finally upon us. It came out last week. And it's funny because I've already kind of expressed some satirical viewpoints as to how I feel about She-Hulk via a tweet and also an Instagram story post, that I was kind of surprised how much of a I don't want to say outcry, but just the response it got when I posted it on Instagram. On Twitter, because it was all one whole tweet, it kind of made more contextual sense. On Instagram, though, I'll read you guys what I said. I pretty much said, going to the hospital towards some ligaments. I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit here, but I pretty much tweeted and posted on Instagram, going to the hospital, tore some ligaments and slipped some discs or broke some discs, something like that, in my spine from the 180 twist I had to do to go from Better Call Saul to She-Hulk in one fucking week. That's pretty much what I said on social media, except on Twitter, it was all just one tweet. On Instagram, I split it into two posts just to kind of deliver a little bit on the comedy. Unfortunately, it didn't really deliver. It didn't really land with a lot of people because I legit got some messages from some people saying, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Are you guys not seeing the second story?" Because the second story is finally when I say, the whole thing about going from Better Call Saul to She-Hulk. The first story is the one about just me going to the hospital for those reasons, quote unquote. Didn't really work out. It was a joke that didn't really land with a lot of people because some people were legitimately worried and hit me up, and I'm like, check out the second story, and they're like, and I love some of you guys, but let's take our time checking out Instagram stories because it kind of makes me worried for your attention span, because one of these days you're gonna skip through something that's vitally important, because that's kind of what this kind of showed to me, is that you guys just go tap through the stories, but once you see the word hospital or spine or whatever, you stop and you just read that sole part and you don't pay attention to the other stuff. So just a little quick Old Man Yellow Cloud style PSA. I'm sorry that this generated, but the topic at hand, She-Hulk. Me and the girlfriend watched the premiere episode, and yeah, I mean, is there a way that I can talk about the show and not be lambasted as like do I run the risk of talking about the show and commentating on it and risk getting called, a sexist, a misogynist, what have you? Because I don't know if I'm vibing with it. I really am not. It's not terrible, but otherwise, they need the first words out of my mouth when credits start rolling, and we finally got done with the mid-credit scene that was poking fun at Captain America again. The initial phrase that just came to mind was, they should have released a two-parter. It should have been a two-part premiere with the first two episodes, especially since, unlike not so much WandaVision, because I think WandaVision was 9 episodes, but unlike Moon Knight and Loki and all those that did, I think, I'm trying to remember, did Loki have a 2-episode premiere? One of them had a 2-episode premiere that ended up having 6, that was just 6 episodes, so we were already technically a third of the way through when we watched that premiere. I remember there was one. It was either Loki or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or I don't think it was Moon Knight. It was something earlier than that. There was one episode, or was it Miss Marvel? I think it was actually Miss Marvel, where they premiered the first 2 episodes back to back. And I might be wrong about that, but I remember there was one Marvel show earlier this year that I said, oh wow, we're already technically a third of the way through because they premiered the first 2 episodes, but there's only going to be 6. This one needed the 2-episode premiere, not 1. It's so ironic that this one gets bumped out to 9 episodes, but we only get 1 episode to premiere, because this did not feel like the first episode. This felt like what needed to be either the second or third, because shit just happens without proper context or subtext to it all. Whether it be from understanding a character or understanding a set piece, an action sequence, or what have you. I'll keep it a little vague on spoilers, even though there's not much that I really want to go into as far as spoilers are concerned, because that's just how impacted by this premiere episode I really was, because it starts off with the fourth wall break that was being kind of alluded to with some of the trailers that I understood was going to happen, and I knew that She-Hulk was, from the comics, was the first one to do it even before Deadpool. So I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense for this style of show. They're going for something a bit more comedy-driven, something that's taking inspiration from Sex and the City, because if you want to argue that way, Sex and the City also breaks the fourth wall, except she doesn't talk directly to the camera. She's doing like a narration type beat. So yeah, this angle for the She-Hulk, it makes sense for her. It really, really does. And taking inspiration from the comics in that nature, I'm like, all right, it kind of vibes with it. It makes sense. That wasn't my opposition. My opposition was that we just jump right into it. And booting up the episode, seeing that it was just a little under 40 minutes. I know some people were coming to the defense saying, oh yeah, they're going for a shorter format because it's supposed to be a sitcom style sort of thing. But you really need to go all the way with that sitcom style of formatting and structure and breakdown as far as how you structure and how you actually build the episode. It wasn't built that way. It was still built like an hour-long episode, except it wasn't an hour long. It was just 38 minutes, 36 or 37 if you don't count some of the longer credits towards the end. And because of that, we just bum rush right into it. Shit just happens. And I understand that there's going to be episodes later on down the road that are going to explain this, which brings me up to the point, which is some of these reviews that I saw from some critics and whatnot, where they're like, we're giving some glowing response over She-Hulk and saying that it was good, only for me to kind of click into the article or click into the video, and all these reviews would come back saying, this is a spoiler-free review on the first 3 episodes or first 4 episodes, something like that. And I'm like, yeah, no shit, you guys like it. You guys got context from some later episodes. We don't. We as regular viewers, regular consumers watching it from Disney Plus are just getting the first episode, and we don't have context to know exactly where certain people are coming from, where because we have a character who literally breaks through a wall, says, I'm here, She-Hulk fights her, and that's it. The episode ends. I'm like, who the fuck was that? All right. I know her name only because I've seen people mention it in comment sections on YouTube and on Twitter and such. But outside of that, no idea. And the episode just ends. And now we have to wait. By the time you guys are probably listening to this recording, that second episode's already out. But what I'm trying to say is we still have to, from the time when I watched this and had that initial impression, I have to wait another week. And I know that that's how television traditionally works, but it's I don't know. It just felt structurally kind of piecemealed together a little bit, especially with the way that, like I said, we're rushing into action set pieces, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe, especially with the introduction of side characters like this antagonistic character. I think her name is Titania or something like that, played by Jamila Jamil, or I think that's her name. I'm like, okay, we're probably going to get a backstory. We might even get like a bottle episode on her later down the line, once they kind of recontextualize, once we get some insight into Jennifer Walters being an attorney for superpowered people, and that's how Abomination gets played in, how Daredevil's going to factor in, all that good stuff. All right, fine. But that all that stuff can kind of be a little quote-unquote passable. What is not passable is when you can't make us like your main character. I'm sorry. I did not like Jennifer. I did not like her in this. I hate to say it, but I just did not like Jennifer Walters in this show. At least as a character. When she hulked out, yes. I'm fine with that, if you catch my meaning. Girlfriend, kept putting her hands in front of my eyes. But as far as a character, especially when we get her introduction very early on, and for a little bit, I was kind of rolling with it, and the way that she was being introduced with her dynamic with Bruce, incidents go down, and we get her explanation as to why she's hulking out. And there was a little something at the beginning that I was like, oh, okay, they're gonna tackle this. And okay, this is, I guess, a brief spoiler, even though it's not that big of a deal. And like I said, it's very early on in the episode. But initially, it was going to show her being a traditional Hulk, actually raging out and losing sentience. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And even Bruce looked like he was losing it there because apparently he built something to kind of temper down his Hulkness. And that's why he was human at first. But eventually, it's like they completely undo that. It's almost like it almost felt like a reshoot. Like that was not the initial plan. Like he was supposed to still be all Hulk, but they had to come up with something to make him human there at the beginning, and that's why he had that arm device. It didn't feel like an actual story-driven thing. It felt more like a budget thing. And I know that there were some interviews saying that they rewrote some scenes to have Jennifer be in regular Jennifer mode because they wanted to downplay the budget. I understand that, but that's still a red flag where you have to like tamper with the original scripting. And this is from a company like Marvel Studios. Like, give out the money. Pump out the money. I'm sorry, but you guys are Marvel Studios. Feel like half of the movies on the top 10 domestic grossing list are from you guys. You guys got the money. Come on, pour it out there. That way you don't have to restructure screenplay edits just to appease to that. Anyways, for a second it looked a little appealing that she was going to be raging out and she was going to have to go through the same trials and tribulations as Bruce. And immediately the show's like, no, she's sentient now. She can talk. And even Bruce himself is like, what the hell? Why? And she's like, I don't know. Now, someone online brought up the point, and don't get me wrong, it's actually a pretty good point. And that is that Jennifer simply just did not have the same trauma that Bruce did, as far as if we were to go with that lore. They didn't really reference that here, and I don't think they will, because I think technically all those little details Universal still technically has rights over, so they can't Marvel can't really mention them verbatim. But we're supposed to maybe get some implications or some hints that Bruce, whether he mentions it or not, is still has the backstory of dealing with running from the army, getting shot at constantly, frequently looking over his shoulder, constantly going into hiding, whatnot. But furthermore, if we were to go as far as the Ang Lee Hulk, his broken relationship with his father, his physical and emotional trauma from when he was a kid, all that stuff manifested into the Hulk, and the gamma rays simply just brought it out. Jennifer never dealt with that, and that's why she was able to gain control during her Hulk out modes. Okay. Why didn't the show me that, let alone tell me? Why do I need to wait until someone on Twitter tells me? That's the problem. That makes perfect sense. That explanation as to why Jennifer can do that, okay, that makes perfect sense. Why didn't the show tell me that? And yes, you can argue, oh, they'll wait until later in the later episodes. Well, kudos for those who got the first 3 episodes first before anybody else. As far as these critics and online reviewers, I'm still here, just a regular consumer watching the first episode, and I'm just judging the first episode as its own merit. And one of those judgments, one of those problems I had was that Jennifer instantly does everything better than Bruce. I'm sorry, but yes, they Mary sued her. They Mary sued her without any explanations. Like I said, someone on Twitter made that explanation, and it makes logical sense to me. It really does. Why wasn't that in the fucking show? Because we had to focus on a scene where Jennifer has to say how tough it is to be a woman. Yeah. And here's the thing. I was thinking to myself, maybe I'm just looking into it too much. Maybe I'm jumping on that bandwagon. But I got my confirmation that I wasn't, when even my girlfriend agreed. My girlfriend, a female, actually said, yeah, that was forced. That scene of her just explaining like, oh, I get catcalled and all this, and meanwhile I'm like, yeah, I mean, they're not going to say it because Universal has the rights, but Bruce got physically and emotionally abused as a kid, and that manifested into the Hulk, and once he was gammed out, he had to constantly run away from the police and the army and go into hiding and third world countries and live a terrible lifestyle. But you you had your car, you had your nice lawyer career, and when your brother's trying to help, your cousin's trying to help you out, she's just unlikable. Like she's just always giving this pushback, like change me back without ever like in so many scenes she's just not listening. Bruce is just constantly trying to be like, yo, I'm trying to talk to you, and she's just like, I didn't like her. I didn't like her. Tatiana Maslany, she's giving a great performance. Performance-wise, she's good. It's just the writing where I don't know, man. I'm so, yeah. Again, someone listening to this might put them off as far as where I'm coming from here, because they might be getting this impression from me that I'm like, oh, is this a woman thing? It's just a badly written thing that is trying to lean towards being woman. Yeah, men suck. Especially when you have that scene where she's mocking Bruce, going, men. I'm like, yeah, there's something here. There's an angle here from where this is being written from. And that's not to say that, we can't have a male superhero, because we just got an awesome female superhero character in the form of the main character from Prey. She was awesome. She was fucking awesome. Because she was just a badass character that just happened to be female. That's the whole point. That's all you have to do. Here, you literally have a scene where they sit down for her to be like, I'm not gonna beat this to death. I'm just saying that you can have your side characters to kind of pop in there without any proper context and having be one of the faults and still get away with it. You cannot get away with having your main character be this unlikable, and it detached me. It detached me from some of the humor. It detached me from some of the effects. I was getting ready. I was this close to start looking at stuff on my phone towards the third act of the episode, and I'm like, yeah, this is not a good sign that I'm looking at my phone over there, because usually with Marvel shows or anything that's Marvel DC related that me and the girlfriend are wired in to watch as our show or as our movie, phone is off to the side, and I never check in on it. I wasn't checking in during WandaVision. I wasn't checking in during Loki. I wasn't checking in on Moon Knight. Phone was away. I wouldn't check my phone until the episode was over, because those things were dope. I was this close to grabbing the phone. I never did, but I was this close. And it's probably because of how short the episode ended up being. Fingers crossed that we maybe get some revitalization in the second episode, because right now it's shaping up to be kind of a long 9 weeks for She-Hulk. All right, so what have I been playing? Mentioned last week that Spiritfarer was not grabbing me, and if it wasn't going to grab me, I was going to play a different game. So the different game that I'm playing this week is Spiritfarer. So I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it, ladies and gentlemen, but it happened. It clicked. It actually happened. I don't know when it happened specifically. I don't know what I specifically needed to do as far as mechanics, as far as I don't know what it was, but I think maybe as I played the game a bit more passively, there was a session where I booted up. I think it was later that night when I recorded that session that would have been playing a part, or maybe even the next day, where I booted up Spiritfarer. I thought, all right, let me try this thing one more time. Only this time I didn't plug into the game audio-wise. I plugged into my computer and listened to a couple of videos, a couple of long-form videos that had to do with YouTube education and stuff like that. Stuff that I can just listen to. I don't really need to watch anything on the screen. And as I'm just listening to this stuff, I'm kind of passively playing the game over here, especially with those little moments that have to do with waiting an awful lot, like waiting for the boat to get to a certain destination, waiting for certain crops to build on the boat or to grow, waiting certain things to just happen as far as progression in the story and progression in certain tasks and errands and things that you need to manage in Spiritfarer. And as I kind of went through this cycle and started to realize what kind of routine I can kind of build myself for, especially when I started to get into this flow where I was telling myself, I don't know how, like I said, I don't know what the specific moment was, but there was a time where I finally started to go in my brain, okay, drive the boat to this destination. It's going to take a little while to get there. So while you're going, start planting these seeds. What are these other seeds that you just planted? Okay, so this stuff is good to go. You got these ingredients, cook this thing because this person's going to start to get hungry. And before I knew it, the boat got to the destination and it was time to progress a little bit more in the story, but I got stuff done in the meantime and I'm like, wait a minute. Is this what it is? This is what it is. This is what the game was trying to get me to do this entire time. And lo and fucking behold, here we are. The following week, and I think I'm about to hit 20 hours on Spiritfarer. And I've progressed a good amount of the story without going into too many spoilers. Let's just say that some spirits have crossed over to the other side. In a way I was not in an emotional way I was not expecting it to be. I was over here going like, okay, I'm not really feeling attached to some of these characters, but when you finally bid adieu to them, so that they can move on with their afterlife, so to speak, I was like, yo, some of the things that they're saying are quite emotional. I'm not, moved to tears or nothing, but I'm kind of like, oh. And after a little while, I start to feel their absence on the boat. Like, I start to feel, the very first one that was constantly, I don't want to say constantly, but somewhat annoyingly, getting a little annoying with how frequently they were saying, oh, I'm hungry, or I would like this. I was kind of missing that just a tiny, tiny bit. Now, I can't speak like that for every single one of these spirits that hops on board. There's one character in particular I recently brought on board. I want to say either yesterday or the day before that I wholeheartedly can say fuck you to. There's one character that is, I think, designed to be unlikable. I don't know if this character's even never gonna cross over to the other side, or if they are. That's the little hint I'll drop, is that it's not a he, it's a they. It's two characters packed into one. And fuck these guys. I'm sorry, they're terrible. They're actually terrible characters. That I'm like, okay, are we supposed to like this group? And I'm like, all right, the sooner you get off my boat, the better. So just a little bit of a motivator to get their quest done as soon as possible. But outside of that, yeah, I've fallen into this weird routine where I actually do want to see the ending of this game. Obviously, we do have a little bit of a deadline here, which is August 31st. That's when the game's going to get removed from Game Pass. But prior to that, like I said, it's finally clicked. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm actually falling into this really comfortable routine where I know how to tackle certain tasks and quests and mainline objectives on my list. And while I'm managing all that, I'm managing the crops, and I thought it was going to be mundane, but it's not. Like, I've seen the light. I would probably say any newfound nitpicks have been that there were some things that are a little bit unclear as far as where you need to go up until you realize that they were probably in your face the entire time. There's one objective that is very vague, and I was like, what are you talking about? And it wasn't until I finally looked throughout the map and highlighted a number of things on the map until finally the name popped up, and I was like, oh, it was right there the whole time. I thought it was going to be hidden or some shit, and it wasn't. It was, I just there was just no markers. There's certain things that don't have a marker. So I would say if you've never played this game, and I don't know if it's a little too late to jump right into it, because it is a bit of a beefy game as far as hours. Like I mentioned before, I'm about 20 hours in, and I feel like I'm not even. I feel like I barely crossed the halfway mark. My apologies for the stutter. I feel like I barely crossed the halfway mark, and I'm almost about 20 hours in, so it's probably going to be another 20. So to start, I would say you're probably in better hands if you play this either. I think it's actually $10 on PSN right now. So if you want to get it at a deep discount for about a third of the price, you can find it on PSN. Probably as the week trucks on, you might find it back again on sale for $10. Like I mentioned last week, it was on sale and then it went back up to full price. PSN marked it back down to $10, so it's possible that maybe the eShop and the Microsoft Store might follow suit very, very soon. So you might have to check that out. Game Pass, it might be a little too late because it's about to get removed. But if you're gonna do it, I would say do it on the Switch or on Steam. That way you can access it from different accounts and you can play it at your own pace. Because this is a game that feels like it needs to find a groove with you. It needs to find a comfortable routine that you feel at home with, just like I did. Because as I played, I realized that some of my more comfortable moments with the game have been when I'm not plugged in. Because after a little while, you start to hear the same music, you start to hear the same sound effects, the same characters go, hmm, well, like those little grunts and moans and little things that they do, because there's no actual voice lines. It's just all speech bubbles. So whenever you do some of the more quote unquote mundane stuff like cooking and building things on the boat and chopping up wood to make planks and smelting rocks to turn into ingots and stuff like that, that much more rudimentary stuff, those are the moments where I'm like, yes, I'm definitely gonna unplug from the gameplay audio and plug into a podcast or a long form video on YouTube on my computer, listen to that while I do this passively on the side, and that's how I like to play. And that's why I feel like with playing it on Switch, you get to take it with you on the go, or playing it on PC, you can access it from different computers, or better yet, if you happen to get a Steam Deck sent over to you, this would be perfect on Steam Deck. So I've seen the light with Spiritfarer, and I'm definitely going to try to see through it to the very end. Of course, the objective is to play it and complete it before it gets removed from Game Pass, because at least I feel like time-wise I can afford to, and I'll keep you guys updated as to where I land on the finale on next week's episode, and also to see if there's enough time to at least get something else started, because right now I'm still kind of going back and forth as far as what will be the next game to start up after Spiritfarer. Part of me wants to jump onto the Switch and play Pokemon Legends Arceus, I think it's pronounced. Staying on the Switch, I know Bayonetta 3 comes out later in the year, so I think it's time to jump on those Bayonetta games, because I technically do have 1 and 2 on the Switch as well. So different options. But the only other thing I do want to mention on my What I've Been Playing segment, because frankly, as far as those backlog style of games, Spiritfarer is all I've been playing, because I've been too busy, like I mentioned before, creating content and just doing different things and reaching out to contacts and just doing my own shit. So I haven't really been playing anything else except Spiritfarer. It's been taking all my time. However, there's been a little bit of a development for a game that technically I've already played, but now in a newfound way, and that is Spider-Man Remastered. As some of you know, it's recently been released on PC, and it turns out that a buddy of mine went ahead and, my best friend, Surface Assassin, one of my best friends, aka Greg, aka Surface Assassin, whatever you want him to go by, he is the one that I sold my Steam Deck to. And because he's got the Steam Deck, and also because he is more of a PC player than I am, he went ahead and bought Spider-Man on PC on Steam. And it just so happens to be deck verified. I was already kind of contemplating this little idea seed in my head, but he ended up beating me to it. He hit me up and said, hey, you want to borrow back the Steam Deck so that you can play Spider-Man Remastered and maybe make some content out of it? Because there's 2 angles that I can look at this with. One is to simply just make a video about what it's like to play the Steam Deck, what it's like to play Spider-Man Remastered on the Steam Deck, how it runs, how it graphically looks, how, whether or not it's smooth as far as the web swing and the combat, etc. I've actually already played about 30-45 minutes of the game just to kind of get my feet wet, but I haven't really built firm assumptions, and plus I really do need to capture footage, both in-game footage using OBS and then on-camera footage, recording me holding the console and playing the game, that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping to do some of that this week. That's one angle, however. The second angle that I was mentioning it, as far as what kind of content I can kind of extrapolate from this, is seeing exactly how well the Steam Deck could run some of those very loony mods that some people have already been creating for Spider-Man Remastered on PC, because I've already seen some clips that have made me laugh, and people are already creating videos and stuff like that about running Spider-Man on PC and running those mods, those hilarious mods. I'm pretty sure someone maybe have beaten me to it, but I don't know if there's a whole lot of demand or a whole lot of content out there for these specific mods to run on the Steam Deck. So kind of combining the two pieces of content, running Spider-Man on Steam Deck and then running mods, combine them, running the mods for Spider-Man on Steam Deck. So that's a video that I'm planning on kind of creating. So that's one other thing that I, like I said, dabbled a little bit into, but I will be playing a little bit more here as the week kind of rolls on. Spider Remastered on the Steam Deck. And since the Steam Deck is back in my hands for a little bit limited time, not only am I hoping to capture some footage for Spider-Man, but also maybe for the Arkham series to see how the Steam Deck runs those games. I'll keep you guys posted on some thoughts, some abridged thoughts next week. I don't really want to talk about it too much because it is still nevertheless going to make up for some content on the niche main channel, the Batman Spider-Man channel. And if you guys want to stay tuned for that, link is in the description. And one other reason why I wanted to keep this week's podcast short, besides being sick and trying to rest up the voice and the energy, was also knowing that there was going to be, or at least initially thought there was going to be quite an awful lot to talk about from Gamescom in Germany. Gamescom 2022 went down with the man, well, I don't know. So a lot of people consider him to be the myth, but I feel like sometimes he can be a little unnerving and potentially obnoxious, and also just a little, I don't know, there's just something about him. A lot of people like him. I like his work ethic and the way he's able to produce and create things together, but as an actual personality, as a host, I'm like, I don't know, he feels kind of off. And frankly, I feel like Gamescom proved that to a certain degree. So we had Gamescom 2022, and I guess at the time that I'm recording this particular episode, it's probably going to be done by the time it actually does get published and goes up, especially for the YouTube channel, since I'm a little bit behind on the YouTube uploads for the DarkspiderCast. But by the time you're listening to this, the majority of Gamescom has already kind of come to an end. The main event, however, from this whole ordeal that everybody's eyes was on, including me, was the 2-hour presentation during opening night live. Was it opening night live? Yeah, opening night live, I guess. It's funny because it throws me off because it was technically 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., but in Germany it was nighttime. So it was opening night live on Tuesday, the 2-hour presentation that everybody was streaming, everybody was talking about and taking a look at to see what things were in store. And so overall, this 2-hour show, yeah, it keeps happening. It's continuing. It keeps on trucking on. This whole, the situation with the pandemic, putting a stressor on developers, putting them kind of in a vice. And because of that, it's funny because it keeps shocking us and surprising us when shit like this goes down, even though it's already been 2 years since the pandemic broke and since we need to be in the know that this is going to happen. Like this next PlayStation showcase, Xbox showcase, whatever is still waiting for us in store for the remainder of the year, which is, not even that long. We literally got like 3 or 4 months. It's including the Game Awards in December. It keeps shocking us that nothing of big significant importance, no bombastic like reveal that just goes viral ends up happening because we are technically still in a pandemic. The label pandemic has still not been lifted off the world. I know that sounds almost kind of exaggerated a little bit, but it really has not been lifted. It has not been eradicated. And God only knows if it ever will. I mean, Fauci just fucking quit recently his position within the government, and he's going solo. I remember somebody on Twitter saying that it's pretty much the government equivalent of your mom saying, you know what, you do what you want, and leaving. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, you won, you got away with it, but you really didn't get away with it. And that's pretty much what the world is right now. The world is this arrogant child that thinks they got away with it, but they're gonna reap what they're sow. Anyways, tangent aside, we're technically still in a pandemic, and because of that, we keep forgetting that these developers, some of them, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, especially the ones that live in, I don't want to say third world or lesser privileged countries, but just countries where they're like, that are on two sides of the spectrum. They're either stricter on COVID laws, and because they want to keep cases down, or they just can't afford to provide the necessary things inside the building, inside the corporate offices, inside of their actual development offices, to facilitate having that amount of people working without risk there being an outbreak. And they're still working from home, and that requires still sending a lot of documents, a lot of assets, files, bunch of heavy stuff over, all these different servers, and that takes time, like quite literal time. I'm completely, I am not unbeknownst that sometimes a character model needs to be sent over the cloud, over some kind of server, and that literally takes overnight, because of that's just how many gigabytes of data there are, or even terabytes. So we often keep forgetting this, because we sometimes get kind of stuck in the moment of the hype, especially when we're given this illusion that of this hype via an in-person event like Gamescom. You see the crowd, you see Geoff Keighley up there as host with the microphone. It's not some pre-recorded thing. He's up there live. This whole deal is happening live, so we kind of get caught up in the moment, but every so often we need that check. And unfortunately, the ending of these shows, realizing that we didn't get something major for us to be like, oh my God, is traditionally that wake-up call. And it sucks. Now, I did write down some bullet points of some things that did genuinely impress me here. Despite getting delayed last week, which I covered, Hogwarts Legacy did get a new trailer that not only confirmed for those who have missed it that it was getting pushed to February 10th, 2023, but this new trailer didn't really showcase that much gameplay. It was actually leaning more towards the dark arts, like the darker side of Hogwarts Legacy, specifically its story of like what is really going down right there, and having our students poking in business that they probably shouldn't be snooping into, and how that could potentially factor into the story. Outside of that, it wasn't really that flashy of a trailer to really give us a good sense of what's really going down. It's like a little under 2 minutes, so that was really nothing terribly much there to write home about. There was also, speaking of new trailers and speaking of story trailers, a new story trailer on Gotham Knights. And I'm not gonna lie, this new Gotham Knights story trailer was, whoever edited that and showcased the stuff that's actually going down in there, give them some props, because I'm not gonna lie, this trailer was actually pretty good. Granted, it could also be accredited to that editing, it could be accredited to the camera angles that they used, but overall, what I'm seeing from the trailer and how much they're showing off the villains and how different of a light these villains are in, specifically Harley Quinn, who I personally like that Harley Quinn is looking like she's on top. Well, pause, phrasing. But the reason why I say that I like that Harley Quinn is pretty much filling Joker's shoes is because not only do I like that Harley Quinn is kind of building her confidence and kind of giving her the emancipation she deserves, something that's been kind of talked about within popular media, specifically the Birds of Prey movie from a couple years back. But I also like that it insinuates that pretty much our top 3 reoccurring Batman characters, Batman himself, Gordon, and the Joker, pretty much all seemingly died on the same night in the same altercation. So it's cool that everybody who's kind of connected to these 3 main characters are left to kind of pick up the pieces, and that's pretty much what the direction of Gotham Knights is going into. And I'll admit it looked a little spicy. They did showcase a little bit more of Callisto Protocol. However, I don't know if it's just me, but there was something about the footage that they showed. It didn't look bad. It still looked good. It still looked polished. It still looked like a really well held together vertical slice. It just felt like the wrong vertical slice. It felt like this is probably what they should have shown first back during the Summer Games Fest, as opposed to the Gamescom, because of how much closer we are to release date. I feel like they should have swapped. I feel like this should have been the one that they should, because minus the cool gore effects and the kill that he had there at the end with the fan, there wasn't anything all that different. In fact, I saw some people kind of give it a little bit of critical points because of how too similar looked to Dead Space, but not so much in a positive light, but more in a, okay, how close are you going to get before you start to teeter on copyright? You know what I'm saying? After getting some kind of like listings on Amazon, and I just couldn't believe my eyes, I was like, wow, okay. Dead Island 2. It's fucking coming out. this is an actual thing. This is an actual real game, and it's actually coming out on February 3rd. Actually, I'll go ahead and excuse me, try to not say that anymore. But the reason why this is surprising is because this game has literally been in development hell for, I want to say, 7-ish. I think it's that it'll be about 8-ish years by the time it actually does come out. Since I think in 2015, with that initial trailer of the guy jogging or whatever, I'll be truthfully, brutally honest. When I saw this trailer open up and I saw the dude with the dreads, I don't know what it is, but I thought it was going to be Beyond Good and Evil 2. Because I remember there was a character that looked kind of like that there were characters that had kind of that style in that CG trailer of Beyond Good and Evil 2 that we got. And, Geoff Keighley said, this is a game that people have been waiting for a long time. So I'm like, all right, what could it be? And I thought that at first, but then as soon as I saw the bottle of alcohol and the regular condo behind him, I was like, oh shit, I think this is the Dead Island game. And Dead Island 2, and it was. Don't know why it's being called Dead Island 2, since it's being hinted that this is LA. There's no islands in LA unless it's going to be an island that you have to go to at the end. But we got a CG trailer, and I thought that was going to be it, only for them to actually show us some gameplay towards the end there, by the developer coming on stage and talking about the game and what they've been doing since the overhaul, since the swap of developers, which has happened like 3 or 4 times since then. I'm adding that bit in there. Obviously, they didn't talk about the swap of developers, but exactly what they've been doing. And so from the gameplay that I saw and from the characters talking and the humor that they're aiming for, especially with that guy on the seat going down the stairs, I'm guessing that they're trying to retain the tongue-in-cheekiness that they had in the prior games. It's just that sometimes it's very hit or miss. Like, I remember playing the first Dead Island and having a good amount of fun, but not enough to be like, yo, we need a sequel. And that was already after I was reeling, just like everybody else, from how misleading that first trailer was with the first Dead Island, Everybody, knows about that famous first trailer. I even played Dead Island Riptide. I think it was a free game on PS Plus. I might be wrong about that, but I think I played that as well, and that was actually kind of bad. It was kind of janky as hell. So I do have some hopes, especially with the way that technology has advanced far enough here in the future, that Dead Island 2 could maybe take some notes from what made Dying Light spectacular. And I really have to be specifically Dying Light, the first one, not Dying Light 2. Even though I'm not going to say Dying Light 2 is a bad game, but it was very underwhelming. And I think that it's possible that the fatigue that people are feeling from the first-person melee zombie killing or action RPG genre might start to wear a little bit on people. And Dead Island 2 may or may not be releasing on the wrong time. Especially with, like I said, the way that people received Dying Light 2. We'll see. It would be pretty fucking crazy if Dead Island 2. God damn it, these games they're gonna be the end of me with these titles. But it'll be insane if Dead Island 2 ends up being more fun and just overall better than Dying Light 2. That'd be ironic. But yeah, we got that release date, we got that trailer, we got that re-reveal, that overhaul. It definitely looks prettier, and there's actually some really good facial animations, not only with the zombies, but also with the main characters, or the human characters you interact with. Don't know why they were censoring the violence. I don't know if there was like a statute of limitations for how things are shown over there in Germany, but it's crazy that they're like there were some things that were allowed and some things that weren't. And I'm like, okay. We saw like there was a shot of a zombie getting its head smashed to mush and gory mush with the butt of a rifle, but then later on when the character does the same thing from a first person perspective, pretty much it's censored. Like I didn't get that part. And then Geoff would then plug the uncensored version online. So I'm thinking it's a broadcast thing with Germany, I'd imagine, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, that's technically a 2023 game, so I could kind of put it on the back of the brain right now. Because for now, we did get some more trailers for other things coming down later on this year. Sonic Frontiers got a new trailer, and I'm right there with an awful lot of other people. Why the fuck did they not show this trailer first? How could they not show this trailer first? This was actually a pretty good trailer for a Sonic game. It actually looked like a Sonic game. It actually had color and life and speed and exuberance to it. It actually looked like fucking fun. It didn't look like this open, droll environment that they were showcasing with the mechanics. It's possible. It's possible to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's possible that maybe those bits that they were showing us earlier were like testing grounds to show off the gameplay, to show off the mechanics, but they were physically using a asset that was like pre-alpha from like 2-3 years ago, and they fooled us. You know what I'm saying? Like they showed us that, but in the background they were working on what was shown in this story trailer. I'm hoping that that's the case and not a fluke, because what they showed here in this trailer at Gamescom legitimately tempted me into wanting to pre-order. That way I can get at least one of the cool steelbooks, because I think Best Buy and GameStop are doing cool steelbooks. Ironically, the GameStop one has a better looking steelbook than the Best Buy one, because the Best Buy one just has like the logo with some texturing in the background, whereas the GameStop one actually has some art of Sonic doing a cool thing. At least that's what I was going to do, until I realized that the game comes out a day before God of War. So now I'm still in the thinking stage, but I cannot deny that was actually a pretty cool looking trailer for Sonic Frontiers. We also got a trailer for the new Tales from the Borderlands, aka Tales from the Borderlands 2. Gearbox, when I said that I wanted a sequel for Tales from the Borderlands, unfortunately this is not what I meant. I gotta be honest, I'm not feeling this one. I don't know what it is, but I'm not feeling this one. And this is coming from someone who loves the first one, but we also have to keep in mind that you know who made the first one, Telltale. And they're working on, an Expanse game that was also showcased here at Gamescom. Didn't really feel the need to talk about that because I don't really know too much about the Expanse. I know it's a sci-fi show, but outside of that, I really don't know much, except that now Telltale is making a game out of them. And that was shown here. It's one of the random reveals that was shown here at Gamescom. But Telltale has nothing, at least this revamped version of Telltale from Skybound is not working on the new Tales from the Borderlands. It looks like it's being made in-house at Gearbox. And it's kind of showing, because I'm scared that whoever is writing this new Tales from the Borderlands is also the same writer as Borderlands 3. And even though I have not played Borderlands 3, I've heard a lot of people say that Borderlands 3 has some terrible writing and terrible jokes in it. And that's where I made that correlation, that connection, because I did not laugh once watching this trailer from the new Tales from the Borderlands, and I didn't even vibe with any of these characters. They just felt blah. They just felt very generic, very like, oh, what do millennials and Gen Zers say these days? And that's pretty much what the characters are saying and acting like. And I'm not feeling it. Again, I'm not feeling it. Art style still retains that classic cel-shaded Borderlands look, but overall, I'm not seeing any hook to make me go for this game. And that's a shame considering how quickly it's coming up here in October. It comes out this October, and yet I haven't even added it to my 2022 list, because that's how underwhelmed I felt from this trailer. Like, that was a bummer. We also got some gameplay for this ridiculous yet still potentially cool looking game, Lies of P, because apparently you get to play as a Timothée Chalamet version of Pinocchio trying to find Geppetto, but the entire game is kind of streamlined to look like a Souls game. It sounds fucking ridiculous as it looks as fucking ridiculous as it sounds. Obviously something that's very difficult to illustrate here in podcast form, but if you go and watch the trailers, you'll see that as crazy as that sounds on paper, it could actually make for a fun Souls-like game, a Souls spiritual successor, if you will. And, it's from a different developer, I believe a Japanese developer, so it's not like from software, but it looks like there's, it's made by people who take inspiration from the Souls games and are applying it in all the right places. So I'm like, all right, this might be a game to look out for. Especially since there's going to be no harm in playing it, considering that it's coming to day one Game Pass. So I'm signed up for there. It's just going to be a little bit of a wait because it's not coming until sometime in 2023. I would imagine maybe early 2023, but they never specified. So speaking of Timothée Chalamet, let's segue on over to some random reveals. It's funny because speaking of Timothée Chalamet, even though he's not in this, but a new Dune game got announced, different from the one that's called Dune Spice Wars. This one's called Dune Awakening, and it's meant to be an MMO. But once again, it's another fucking trailer that uses these fancy, really elaborate CG trailers, only for them to not have that be the gameplay whatsoever. I honestly feel like they're teetering on false advertisement. Because I saw screenshots of the gameplay for this Dune MMO, and oh my god. Like, how are they not getting sued for something like this at this point? Anyways, that got announced. It was kind of a random reveal, but to me, it couldn't have gotten any more random than a Killer Clowns from Outer Space game. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Okay. Sure, that's what we're doing. Now, one thing that I do find kind of intriguing about the reveal of the Killer Clowns game is that they're taking a page from what worked for other horror 80s properties like Friday the 13th, Predator, etc., where they're making it pretty much an asymmetric multiplayer game. I think they said it's 3 versus 7, so like 3 killer clowns and then 7 regular humans trying to kill the clowns. And I'm like, okay, that could make sense, especially since if you've seen the movie, which frankly I have, you know that the killer clowns themselves have some pretty interesting weaponry and arsenals that then led to some very funny, hilarious kills in that movie. And I feel like if they can take that and put it into the game in a very fun way, especially playing into the multiplayer aspect, that could actually possibly work. I can actually see that working. And I'd say, you know what, maybe I'll have to put this down as a game to keep my eye out, especially if maybe later down the line they announce that it's coming to either PS Plus Extra or Game Pass. Outside of that, though, I know that I'm probably overlooking some things. There's probably some other materials, some other games that were kind of revealed. But overall, my final thoughts on Gamescom was that it was pretty underwhelming. Personally, that I thought it was not only underwhelming, which is not necessarily anything new, considering that, like I mentioned before, we are still technically on a pandemic. Things are still going to get delayed. Certain games that were probably going to be shown here at Gamescom didn't make the cut because the developers are still working on that, and they'd rather be working rather than to crunch for something that's going to be at Gamescom and it's probably going to be criticized for a little while, so they're probably just focusing on all that stuff. That's fine. But what is kind of not fine and maybe needs to be taken a look back at is also an awful lot of the fucking filler. And this show probably should have been an hour to an hour and a half. 2 hours is kind of digestible. It did go by quickly, but I think one of the factors that helped that out was that I was watching it through one of the streamers that I watched through his stream. And if it wasn't for that, it would have made some of the filler moments and also very awkward moments all the more cringe. Like, there were some times in this show where, like I said, there were some fillers for, like, most anticipated Xbox game, most anticipated PlayStation game, and I'm like, why the fuck are we awarding these things now at the Gamescom? I'm sorry, it just feels very self-patting on the back type thing, self-congratulatory is what I'm trying to say. And then on top of that, like I said, some awkward moments that I'm like, what the hell's going on? Some moments where Geoff Keighley looked like he was losing his steam and the crowd was kind of working against him. There were some moments where the reveals were just not up to snuff the way that Geoff was talking about him. And because of that, he kept doing this routine where he kept asking the audience, you guys remember blank? And there were a couple times in the last hour where he would do that. And there were crickets. Nobody was responding. No one. And I was like, yo, how did that happen? Like, the audience is turning on Geoff, and the streamer that I was watching, like, people in the chat and the streamer himself, they were laughing, like, at Geoff. Like, yeah, this shit needed to be cut. Like that joke or whatever. I don't know who told you in rehearsal that worked, but it didn't. And I'm hoping that maybe he watches some of those dailies and goes back and fine tunes some things, hopefully in favor of the running time for the Game Awards come in December. Because yeah, there were some things that just did not work for the Gamescom overall. Some things were expected, like the lack of gut punching reveals. Some things did work in its favor as far as showcasing a good Sonic Frontiers trailer, a good Gotham Knights trailer, but overall, nothing that we didn't already know. And there was going to be a couple of other stories that I wanted to somewhat squeeze into the Google Doc that kind of broke at the last second, but they also managed to break when I was not feeling all too well. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and punt them off to next week. I know they're going to be a little bit old by then, but at the same time, we just had a Gamescom, so it's a good chance that the gaming industry is going to be a little quiet. And yes, I understand that there was also a reveal for a new PlayStation controller called the PlayStation Edge or DualSense Edge, which is kind of their equivalent to the Elite controller from Xbox. That's pretty much what that is. I mean, there's not much more that I can really divulge because they literally just had a little, quick CG look at the controller and hints of what it could be. But to be honest, if I'm going to talk about the controller, I'm going to wait for legitimate specs to be revealed. I mean, there was barely anything that I could really chew on with that one. So, because of that stuff, and because of also, like I said, I've been sick, and I kind of wanted to keep this episode short anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign it off here, leave some of those topics for next week's episode, and thank you guys for listening. Of course, if you guys want to keep in touch outside of my podcast or the niche channel, you guys can add me on Twitter and on Instagram at DarkspiderDavid, all one word, or you can simply click on the links in the description, check out the website, check out the niche channel or the Spider-Man Batman channel there. Huge stuff coming from McFarlane, so I'm personally kind of stoked to cover some of that stuff, and I'm hoping you guys will be in for the ride. Otherwise, guys, gonna go ahead and get myself a lozenge or something to just kind of help speed things along here. In the meantime, though, take care of your guys' selves, stay healthy, and stay humble. Peace.